Imagine this, you're sitting in a bustling coffee shop in downtown Manhattan, scrolling through your phone after yet another draining conversation with someone in your life. Maybe it's that colleague who constantly undermines you, the friend who only calls when they need something, or the family member whose presence fills you with anxiety. You feel exhausted, confused, and somehow guilty for even questioning these relationships. Sound familiar? We often think of our relationships as mere extensions of our daily routines, rarely stopping to consider their profound impact on our well-being. Yet what if I told you that the quality of your relationships could be the single most crucial factor in your pursuit of a happy and fulfilled life? This isn't just modern psychology speaking, it's ancient wisdom that has guided seekers of truth for over 2,000 years. Today, we dive deep into the wisdom of Stoicism, an ancient philosophy that teaches us not just about resilience and peace in the face of adversity, but also about the importance of surrounding ourselves with people who truly respect and enrich our lives. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor who ruled Rome while writing some of history's most profound insights, reminds us, "Be like the rocky headland on which the waves constantly break. It stands firm, and round it the seething waters are laid to rest." But here's what many people misunderstand about Stoicism. It isn't just about enduring hardship with a stiff upper lip. True Stoicism is about recognizing what's truly beneficial for our inner tranquility and moral development. It's about making wise choices that align with virtue, not simply accepting whatever life throws at us. In this exploration, we'll uncover 12 clear signs that might indicate it's time to reevaluate certain relationships in your life, possibly even to the extent of walking away. This isn't about avoiding negative influences out of weakness, it's about actively choosing a path that aligns with the four cardinal virtues of Stoicism: wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. Seneca, the Roman statesman and Stoic philosopher, wrote extensively about the power of our associations. Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. Sometimes protecting our peace of mind and commitment to virtue requires the courage to end relationships that no longer serve our highest good. Whether you're navigating the competitive landscape of New York's corporate world, dealing with toxic friendships in Los Angeles, or struggling with family dynamics in Chicago, this discussion will offer you the tools and perspectives necessary to transform your approach to interpersonal connections. We'll learn how to cut ties with grace while protecting our most precious asset, our peace of mind. Join me as we embark on this journey together, discovering how ancient Stoic wisdom can guide us through the complexities of modern relationships. If you appreciate the wisdom we're sharing here at Stoic Vivu, the simplest way to support our mission is to hit that subscribe button and ensure you don't miss any part of this transformative discussion. 1. Defending your dignity when justice is absent. Sarah works as a marketing manager at a prestigious firm in downtown Chicago. Every morning, she walks into the office with a knot in her stomach, knowing that her supervisor, Mike, will likely interrupt her presentations, dismiss her ideas in front of clients, and take credit for her successful campaigns. When she tries to speak up, he cuts her off with condescending remarks like, "Let the adults handle this," or "Maybe you're not ready for this level of responsibility." Sound familiar? Sarah is experiencing what the Stoics would recognize as a fundamental violation of human dignity, a persistent lack of respect that strikes at the very core of what it means to live a virtuous life. Respect is fundamentally woven into the fabric of any healthy relationship. It serves as the bedrock upon which all other interactions are built. In the realm of Stoicism, respect aligns closely with the virtue of justice, which calls for treating others with fairness and dignity. Marcus Aurelius, writing in his Meditations, reminds us, "We were born to work together like feet, hands, and eyes, like the two rows of teeth, upper and lower." This interconnectedness demands mutual respect. Anything less disrupts the natural harmony that should exist between rational beings. When we talk about persistent lack of respect, we're addressing a critical violation of both interpersonal ethics and Stoic principles. Imagine constantly being treated without the basic courtesy you extend to others. It's like having your dignity chipped away piece by piece, day after day. This consistent undermining isn't just unpleasant, it's a signal that the relationship is fundamentally out of sync with the Stoic aim of living a virtuous life. Consider another example. David, a software engineer in San Francisco, has a friend named Alex who consistently shows up late to their plans, cancels at the last minute without apology, and monopolizes conversations with self-centered stories. When David tries to share his own experiences or concerns, Alex either changes the subject or responds with dismissive comments like, "That's nothing compared to what happened to me." This pattern of behavior demonstrates a profound lack of respect for David's time, feelings, and inherent worth as a human being. For Stoics, every interaction is an opportunity to practice virtues like wisdom and justice. When someone repeatedly treats you with disrespect, they are not only harming your well-being but also impeding your ability to live according to these principles. Seneca, in his letters to Lucilius, writes, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." Sometimes, defending our dignity requires the wisdom to recognize when a relationship has become incompatible with our commitment to virtue. The disrespect can manifest in countless ways, through words that belittle and diminish, actions that ignore your boundaries and preferences, or simply through neglect that treats you as unworthy of basic consideration. In our modern world, this might look like a romantic partner who publicly mocks your aspirations, a family member who consistently invalidates your feelings, or a colleague who takes credit for your work while undermining your contributions. Stoicism teaches us not to react with anger or resentment, which are natural but ultimately unhelpful responses. Marcus Aurelius counsels how much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does. Instead, Stoic philosophy guides us to respond with reason, judgment, and emotional detachment. This means recognizing the lack of respect for what it is, a deviation from virtuous living that reflects poorly on the perpetrator, not on you. However, emotional detachment doesn't mean passive acceptance. Epictetus, who himself experienced the ultimate disrespect as a slave, taught that while we cannot control others' actions, we can control our responses. Sometimes the most rational response is to distance ourselves from those who consistently fail to treat us with basic human dignity. This isn't about casting blame or becoming embittered, but about understanding the impact of others' actions on our path to living a good life and deciding calmly and rationally whether those relationships should continue to play a significant role in our lives. The Stoic practice of evening reflection, where we examine our day and our responses to various situations, can be particularly helpful here. Ask yourself, did this person's treatment of me today align with the respect I deserve as a rational being? Did their behavior contribute to or detract from my ability to practice virtue? Recognizing and addressing a consistent lack of respect isn't merely a reactive stance, it's a proactive measure to safeguard your mental peace and moral integrity. It's about making a choice that aligns with Stoic values, choosing not to accept less than you deserve and stepping away if necessary to remain true to your principles of living justly and with dignity. This isn't just self-protection, it's an assertion of your worth and a commitment to the Stoic pursuit of virtue in all your relationships. 2. Guarding your inner citadel, mental health as sacred ground. Jessica, a 28-year-old attorney in Manhattan, dreads Sunday evenings. Not because Monday means returning to work, but because Sunday dinners with her family have become a source of intense anxiety. Her mother's constant criticism about her career choices, her father's passive-aggressive comments about her lifestyle, and her brother's dismissive attitude toward her accomplishments leave her feeling emotionally drained for days afterward. She finds herself lying awake at night, replaying conversations, second-guessing her decisions, and battling waves of self-doubt that seem to emerge from nowhere. What Jessica is experiencing is a direct assault on what the Stoics called the inner citadel, that sacred space of mental tranquility that forms the foundation of a virtuous life. When it comes to our mental health, the influence of those around us can be profound and pervasive. Stoicism teaches us the paramount importance of maintaining our tranquility, what the Greeks called ataraxia, the state of being calm and undisturbed. This isn't about suppressing emotions or pretending everything is fine when it's not. Rather, it's about understanding and managing our emotional responses effectively, especially when they are negatively affected by others in our lives. Marcus Aurelius, writing during his military campaigns along the Danube frontier, understood the critical importance of mental fortitude. In his meditations, he writes, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." However, even this powerful insight comes with a crucial caveat. While we cannot control external events, we have both the right and the responsibility to control our environment when possible, especially when that environment consistently undermines our mental well-being. Consider the case of Michael, a graphic designer in Los Angeles who shares an apartment with a roommate named Tyler. Tyler is perpetually negative, complaining about everything from the weather to the government to their neighbors. He dismisses Michael's creative projects as pointless and constantly predicts failure for any venture Michael attempts. After months of this toxic atmosphere, Michael notices he's lost his creative spark, feels increasingly pessimistic about his future, and has developed insomnia. His mental health is deteriorating not because of his own choices, but because of the relentless negativity he's absorbing from someone else. If you find yourself frequently feeling anxious, depressed, or stressed due to someone's influence in your life, it's a clear sign that the relationship may be causing more harm than good. Stoicism doesn't just urge us to endure hardship, it advises us to cultivate environments that contribute to our flourishing. Seneca, one of the most practical of the Stoic philosophers, frequently discussed the importance of our associations. In his letters to Lucilius, he writes, "Nothing, to my way of thinking, is a better proof of a well-ordered mind than a man's ability to stop just where he is and pass some time in his own company." But Seneca also recognized that solitude isn't always possible or desirable. He advocated for surrounding ourselves with people who elevate rather than diminish us, associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve. This isn't about seeking only positive people who never challenge us, but about distinguishing between constructive challenge and destructive influence. The Stoics understood that our well-being depends largely on our inner state rather than external circumstances. However, they also recognized that we have a duty to protect our inner peace from consistently disruptive influences. Think of your mental health as sacred ground, a temple that deserves protection from those who would desecrate it through their words, actions, or energy. Reflecting on the impact of a relationship on your mental health isn't just about identifying negative emotions, it's about taking action to ensure you're not held captive by them. This might mean having honest conversations about how someone's behavior affects you, setting clear boundaries about what you will and won't tolerate, or in some cases, creating physical and emotional distance from those who consistently disrupt your peace of mind. Consider the example of Linda, a teacher in Denver whose friend Maria constantly creates drama, shares every piece of gossip she hears, and seems to thrive on conflict. After spending time with Maria, Linda feels agitated, judgmental toward others, and finds herself engaging in negative conversations she normally wouldn't participate in. Recognizing this pattern, Linda begins limiting her interactions with Maria, choosing instead to invest her social energy in friendships that leave her feeling inspired and peaceful. When a relationship consistently undermines your mental health, it's not a failure of your Stoic practice, it's a signal to reassess and potentially recalibrate your social connections. This isn't about avoiding all challenges or seeking only comfortable relationships. Rather, it's about making strategic decisions to foster a healthier, more harmonious inner life, which is the ultimate goal of Stoic practice. As Epictetus taught, wealth consists in not having great possessions, but in having few wants. Sometimes, the greatest wealth we can achieve is the peace that comes from removing toxic influences from our lives. 3. Living by your compass when values collide. Amanda, a 32-year-old nonprofit director in Seattle, sits across from her longtime friend Rachel at their favorite coffee shop, feeling increasingly uncomfortable as Rachel brags about cheating on her taxes, manipulating her elderly mother for money, and lying to her employer about sick days to take vacation trips. What troubles Amanda most isn't just Rachel's behavior. It's how casually Rachel dismisses Amanda's concerns with comments like, "Everyone does it," and "You're too naive for your own good." Amanda values honesty, integrity, and compassion, principles that guide every major decision in her life. Yet here she is, maintaining a close friendship with someone whose actions directly contradict everything she believes in. This internal conflict is eating away at her peace of mind, creating what the Stoics would recognize as a fundamental misalignment between her values and her associations. Our core beliefs and values are like the compass that guides us through the complexities of life, helping us make decisions that align with who we are and what we stand for. When these fundamental principles consistently clash with those of someone close to us, it can lead to significant internal conflicts that undermine our psychological well-being and moral development. Stoicism places a strong emphasis on harmony and personal integrity, making such misalignments not just inconvenient, but a serious concern for anyone committed to living a virtuous life. The Stoics taught that peace of mind comes from living a life of virtue in accordance with rational principles. Marcus Aurelius, reflecting on the importance of moral consistency, wrote, "Never esteem anything as of advantage to you that will make you break your word or lose your self-respect. When someone close to us lives by a set of values that fundamentally conflict with our own, it challenges our ability to maintain this peace and can force us into compromising situations that violate our integrity." Consider the case of David, a financial advisor in Boston who prides himself on ethical business practices and transparent communication with his clients. His business partner, James, regularly pressures him to sell unnecessary products to elderly clients, hide fees in complex contracts, and prioritize profits over people's financial well-being. James justifies these practices by saying, "It's just business. Everyone in finance does this stuff." The constant pressure to compromise his values is creating tremendous stress for David, who finds himself questioning not only his business relationship but his own moral compass. These value conflicts can manifest in countless ways throughout our lives. Perhaps you value environmental responsibility, but your friend consistently mocks your efforts to live sustainably and pressures you to engage in wasteful behaviors. Maybe you believe in treating all people with dignity and respect, but a family member regularly makes racist or sexist comments and expects you to laugh along. Or you might prioritize financial responsibility and living within your means, while your partner encourages reckless spending and accumulating debt for material possessions. The psychological toll of these misalignments extends far beyond momentary discomfort. Over time, these conflicts can erode the trust and mutual respect that are essential for any healthy relationship. More profoundly, they can compromise your own moral development and self-respect. Seneca warned about this danger in his letters to Lucilius. "Nothing, to my way of thinking, is a better proof of a well-ordered mind than a man's ability to stop just where he is and pass some time in his own company." When we're constantly surrounded by people whose values conflict with our own, we lose the ability to hear our own moral voice clearly. Marcus Aurelius frequently wrote about the importance of surrounding oneself with people who embody the virtues we aspire to cultivate. In his Meditations, he reflects, "Be like the rocky headland on which the waves constantly break. It stands firm, and round it the seething waters are laid to rest." This metaphor applies perfectly to value conflicts. We must remain firm in our principles even when others around us are pushing us to compromise. Addressing such misalignments requires honest self-reflection and courageous action. Start by clearly identifying your core values, those non-negotiable principles that define who you are and how you want to live. Then examine your relationships through this lens. Are the people closest to you supporting your commitment to these values, or are they consistently pressuring you to compromise them? Sometimes, open and honest conversations can help bridge the gap. You might discover that the other person hasn't considered how their behavior affects you, or that they're willing to modify their approach out of respect for your values. However, if these discussions reveal that the gap is too wide to bridge, it may be necessary to reconsider the relationship's role in your life. This process isn't about judging others as fundamentally wrong or bad people. Rather, it's about recognizing that not every relationship serves the higher purpose of your personal and ethical development. As Epictetus taught, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. Sometimes embodying our philosophy means making the difficult decision to distance ourselves from those whose values consistently conflict with our own, creating space for relationships that support our commitment to living virtuously. 4. Preserving your vital force, energy as currency. Marcus, a software developer in Austin, used to love his weekly coffee meetings with his college friend Kevin. But over the past year, these encounters have become increasingly exhausting. Kevin dominates every conversation with complaints about his job, his relationships, and his health, but dismisses any advice or perspective Marcus offers. When Marcus tries to share his own experiences, a recent promotion, his engagement, or even simple daily observations, Kevin either interrupts with his own problems or responds with dismissive comments like, "Must be nice," or "You don't understand real struggle." After these meetings, Marcus feels emotionally drained, mentally foggy, and strangely guilty, as if he's somehow failed as a friend. What Marcus is experiencing is what the Stoics would recognize as an unsustainable drain on his vital energy, that precious resource we need to live purposefully and virtuously. In any healthy relationship, the exchange of energy should be revitalizing, not depleting. When interactions with someone consistently leave you feeling drained, it's a significant indicator that the dynamics of the relationship may be fundamentally misaligned with the principles of Stoicism, which values self-preservation through rational and harmonious living. The ancient Stoics understood that our energy, both emotional and physical, is a finite resource that must be used judiciously in service of virtue and human flourishing. Seneca, writing to his friend Lucilius about the art of living well, emphasized the importance of being selective about our associations. "Nothing, to my way of thinking, is a better proof of a well-ordered mind than a man's ability to stop just where he is and pass some time in his own company. But he also recognized that when we do choose to spend time with others, those relationships should contribute to our well-being rather than diminish it. In his letters, he writes, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. Sometimes preserving our energy requires the wisdom to end relationships that consistently deplete us." Consider the example of Sarah, a marketing executive in Chicago who has a friend named Lisa. Every phone call with Lisa follows the same pattern. Lisa calls in crisis, shares her latest drama for an hour, accepts Sarah's emotional support and practical advice, then abruptly ends the call when she feels better. Lisa never asks about Sarah's life, rarely remembers important events Sarah has mentioned, and becomes defensive or changes the subject when Sarah tries to share her own challenges. After these conversations, Sarah feels emotionally exhausted and somehow invisible, as if her own experiences and feelings don't matter. Marcus Aurelius, reflecting on the importance of mutual benefit in relationships, wrote, "We were born to work together like feet, hands, and eyes, like the two rows of teeth, upper and lower." This metaphor illustrates the Stoic ideal of reciprocity, each part supporting and strengthening the whole. When a relationship becomes consistently one-sided, with one person always giving and the other always taking, it violates this natural harmony and creates an unsustainable dynamic. The signs of energy depletion can manifest in various ways. You might experience emotional fatigue, feeling mentally exhausted after spending time with certain people even when the interaction seemed pleasant on the surface. There's often a sense of dread about upcoming interactions where you find yourself making excuses to avoid spending time with someone you once enjoyed. Physical symptoms can include actual tiredness, headaches, or a general feeling of being run down after certain social encounters. Sometimes the drain is more subtle but equally damaging. Consider James, a teacher in Portland whose colleague Maria constantly interrupts him during meetings, dismisses his ideas, and then later presents similar concepts as her own. While Maria isn't overtly hostile, her behavior creates a persistent low-level stress that accumulates over time. James finds himself dreading work, second-guessing his contributions, and feeling less confident in his professional abilities. Epictetus, who understood suffering intimately from his own experiences, taught that we must be vigilant guardians of our inner resources. Wealth consists in not having great possessions, but in having few wants. In the context of relationships, this wisdom suggests that we should want fewer draining connections and instead cultivate relationships that truly nourish us. Taking action in such situations involves a thoughtful evaluation of why the relationship drains you. Is it due to a lack of mutual support where you're always the one providing emotional labor? Are the interactions consistently negative, filled with complaints, gossip, or criticism? Does the person demand your attention at inconvenient times without regard for your boundaries or needs? Identifying the root cause is the first step in deciding how to address the issue. Sometimes honest communication about your feelings can help rebalance the relationship. You might say something like, "I've noticed our conversations tend to focus heavily on problems. I'd love to also share some positive experiences and hear about good things happening in your life." However, if these efforts prove unsuccessful, Stoicism teaches us the wisdom of protecting our vital energy for relationships and activities that truly serve our highest good. This isn't selfishness, it's strategic self-care that enables us to show up more fully for the people and causes that matter most. 5. Seeking truth in a web of lies, conquering manipulation. Jennifer, a 29-year-old graphic designer in Miami, has been dating Ryan for 8 months. Lately, she's been questioning her own memory and judgment. When she mentions plans they made together, Ryan insists they never had that conversation. When she expresses concern about his behavior, he responds with statements like, "You're being too sensitive," or, "That's not what happened. You're remembering it wrong." He frequently cancels their plans at the last minute, then makes Jennifer feel guilty for being disappointed by saying things like, "I thought you'd be more understanding," or, "If you really cared about me, you wouldn't make such a big deal about this." Jennifer finds herself constantly apologizing for feelings she's not sure she should have and doubting perceptions she once trusted completely. What Jennifer is experiencing is a sophisticated form of psychological manipulation that the Stoics would recognize as a direct assault on one of their most fundamental principles, the pursuit of truth and clarity. In the realm of Stoicism, the pursuit of authenticity and clarity is paramount. These virtues allow us to live in harmony with our true selves and the world around us, making rational decisions based on accurate perceptions of reality. Manipulation, however, stands in stark opposition to these principles. It distorts reality, reshaping it in a way that benefits the manipulator at the expense of the manipulated. This distortion can lead to decisions that are not in your best interest, clouding your judgment and leading you away from the Stoic ideal of living a reasoned and virtuous life. Marcus Aurelius, writing in his Meditations, emphasized the critical importance of clear perception. Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is perspective, not truth. While this might seem to suggest that truth is relative, the Stoic interpretation is quite different. It's a call to examine information carefully, to distinguish between facts and interpretations, and to remain vigilant against those who would distort our understanding for their own purposes. Manipulation in relationships often involves subtle psychological tactics that can be extraordinarily difficult to detect, especially when they're employed by someone you trust. Consider the case of Michael, a marketing manager in Denver whose business partner, Alex, consistently uses guilt and emotional manipulation to get his way. When Michael disagrees with a business decision, Alex responds with statements like, "I thought we were partners," or, "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me." Alex also has a pattern of rewriting history, claiming that previous agreements were different from what Michael remembers, making Michael question his own memory and judgment. The manipulation might be as overt as outright deceit, lying about facts, events, or intentions. But more often, it's subtle, guilt-tripping that makes you feel responsible for the manipulator's emotions, gaslighting where your memories or perceptions are consistently called into question, or emotional blackmail where affection is withdrawn as punishment for not complying with the manipulator's wishes. Epictetus, who understood the importance of mental freedom from his own experience as a slave, taught, "No one can hurt you without your permission." However, this doesn't mean that manipulation is the victim's fault. Rather, it's a reminder that once we recognize manipulation, we have the power to withdraw our consent to participate in the distorted reality the manipulator is creating. For Stoics, this presents a significant problem because Stoicism teaches the paramount importance of seeing things as they truly are, without the interference of external distortions. Seneca wrote extensively about the importance of truth in his letters to Lucilius. "Truth will never be tedious unto him that travels through the nature of things. It is falsehood that gluts the mind." When someone manipulates you, they are imposing their will and disrupting your ability to make reasoned judgments based on accurate perceptions. Consider another example. Lisa, a nurse in Phoenix, has a friend named Karen who consistently uses emotional manipulation to get her way. When Lisa sets boundaries, saying she can't lend money or can't provide last-minute childcare. Karen responds with statements designed to induce guilt. "I guess I know where I stand in your priorities," or "I would do anything for you." But apparently that's not mutual. Karen also employs what psychologists call love bombing, showering Lisa with excessive attention and gifts after manipulative episodes, creating a confusing cycle that makes Lisa question whether she's overreacting to Karen's behavior. Dealing with manipulation requires a firm adherence to Stoic principles. Seek the truth, live with integrity, and maintain your autonomy. This might involve setting clear boundaries with the manipulator, documenting conversations to maintain clarity about what was actually said, or becoming more vigilant about the signs of manipulative behavior. It's crucial to reaffirm your values and commit to actions that align with those values, rather than reacting impulsively to the manipulative tactics. Confronting manipulation also involves the Stoic practice of reflection, examining the nature of the relationship and your responses to it. Ask yourself, am I being encouraged to act against my better judgment? Are my perceptions consistently being questioned or dismissed? Do I feel confused or guilty after interactions with this person? This reflective practice can help you understand whether the relationship can be salvaged through honest communication and mutual commitment to change, or whether wisdom dictates creating distance to protect your clarity and peace of mind. 6. Building on bedrock, trust as foundation. David, a 34-year-old architect in San Francisco, used to share everything with his business partner and close friend, Mark. They started their firm together 5 years ago, built on promises of transparency, mutual support, and shared vision. But over the past year, David has discovered a series of troubling inconsistencies. Mark told clients that David was unavailable when he wasn't, made financial decisions without consulting David despite their partnership agreement, and even met with potential clients behind David's back. When confronted, Mark either denies these incidents or minimizes them with responses like, "I was just trying to handle things efficiently," or "You're making a bigger deal out of this than it needs to be." David finds himself constantly second-guessing Mark's words, checking up on his actions, and feeling anxious about the future of their business. The foundation of trust that once made their partnership effortless has crumbled, leaving David in a state of perpetual vigilance that's exhausting and demoralizing. Trust is not just a component of a relationship, it is the very foundation upon which all meaningful connections are built. In the context of Stoicism, trust aligns perfectly with the virtue of justice, which emphasizes fairness, honesty, and reliability, qualities that are absolutely essential for any profound and lasting relationship. Without trust, relationships become unstable structures filled with doubts and insecurities that prevent genuine intimacy and authentic connection from flourishing. Marcus Aurelius, reflecting on the nature of human relationships in his Meditations, wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." This wisdom extends to trust. When someone proves untrustworthy, the Stoic response isn't to become untrustworthy ourselves, but to maintain our own integrity while making rational decisions about the relationship's future. He also noted, "Confine yourself to the present," reminding us that while we cannot change past betrayals, we can make wise choices about how to proceed. Stoicism teaches us to be dependable and truthful, not only because these are virtuous qualities in themselves, but because they foster an environment where trust can flourish. When trust is lacking in a relationship, it's often because these fundamental Stoic values are not being upheld by one or both parties. This absence creates a cascade of negative emotions and behaviors that can poison even the strongest bonds. Consider the example of Maria, a marketing director in Atlanta whose longtime friend, Jessica, has repeatedly broken confidences. Maria shared personal struggles about her marriage, explicitly asking Jessica to keep the information private. Within weeks, Maria discovered that Jessica had shared these intimate details with mutual friends, adding her own commentary and speculation. When confronted, Jessica dismissed Maria's concerns with, "I didn't think it was that big a deal, and everyone talks about their friends sometimes." This pattern has repeated multiple times, leaving Maria feeling exposed and unable to be vulnerable with someone she once considered her closest confidant. The absence of trust manifests in predictable ways that the Stoics would recognize as contrary to human flourishing. Suspicion replaces openness. Instead of sharing freely, you find yourself carefully calculating what information is safe to reveal. Fear overtakes hope. Rather than assuming positive intentions, you begin expecting disappointment or betrayal. Instead of moving forward together in mutual support, individuals find themselves constantly guarding against potential harm from someone who should be an ally. Seneca, in his letters to Lucilius, addressed this challenge directly. It takes a great deal of boldness and a great deal of caution to make a great fortune, and when you have got it, it requires 10 times as much wit to keep it. The same principle applies to trust. It requires boldness to trust initially, caution to trust wisely, and tremendous effort to rebuild trust once it's been broken. Think of Robert, a software engineer in Seattle whose roommate, Tom, repeatedly borrows his belongings without asking and sometimes damages or loses them. When Robert addresses these incidents, Tom either claims he forgot to ask or promises to be more careful in the future, but the behavior continues. Robert finds himself hiding valuable items, feeling uncomfortable in his own home, and constantly monitoring Tom's actions. The basic trust that should exist between people sharing a living space has eroded to the point where Robert feels like he's living with a stranger he can't rely on. Addressing the lack of trust involves returning to Stoic principles through honest self-assessment and dialogue. The first question a Stoic would ask is, are my own actions contributing to this lack of trust? This requires brutal honesty about our own reliability, transparency, and consistency. Epictetus taught, don't explain your philosophy. Embody it. If we expect trustworthiness from others, we must first embody it ourselves. If the trust issues stem from the other party, a Stoic approach involves both empathy and firmness. This might mean initiating difficult conversations to uncover the root of the trust issues, clearly expressing how broken trust affects the relationship, and establishing specific behavioral changes needed to rebuild confidence. However, it's crucial to recognize that trust, once broken, requires time and consistent action to repair, and sometimes, despite our best efforts, it cannot be fully restored. In some cases, maintaining your own peace of mind and adherence to Stoic virtues may require the difficult decision to distance yourself from relationships where trust cannot be restored, recognizing that some foundations, once cracked, cannot bear the weight of meaningful connection. 7. Protecting your inner sanctuary, zero tolerance for abuse. Lisa, a 31-year-old teacher in Phoenix, walks on eggshells around her boyfriend, Jake. What started as occasional harsh criticism has escalated into a pattern of verbal attacks that leave her questioning her worth and sanity. Jake calls her stupid when she makes minor mistakes, screams at her for perceived slights, and then apologizes profusely, promising it will never happen again. He isolates her from friends by creating scenes when she tries to make social plans, controls her finances by insisting she's bad with money, and has recently begun pushing her during arguments, not hard enough to leave visible marks, he claims, but enough to intimidate her into silence. Lisa finds herself making excuses for his behavior, believing his promises to change, and somehow feeling responsible for triggering his anger. What Lisa is experiencing represents a fundamental violation of human dignity that no philosophical framework, especially Stoicism, would ever condone or rationalize. Stoicism unequivocally condemns any form of abuse, whether physical, emotional, psychological, or verbal. These actions are completely antithetical to the Stoic commitment to treating all human beings with inherent worth, dignity, and consideration. Abuse in any form undermines the very essence of what it means to live a virtuous and meaningful life, and it directly contradicts the Stoic principles of justice, wisdom, and rational living. Marcus Aurelius, writing in his Meditations, emphasized the sacred nature of human dignity. We were born to work together like feet, hands, and eyes, like the two rows of teeth, upper and lower. This metaphor illustrates the Stoic belief that humans are meant to support and protect one another, not to harm or diminish each other. Abuse represents a complete perversion of this natural order, turning what should be a source of mutual support into a source of harm and degradation. It's crucial to understand that in Stoic thought, enduring abuse is never seen as a requirement or virtue. This is perhaps one of the most misunderstood aspects of Stoicism in popular culture. True Stoicism advocates for the preservation of one's self-respect, dignity, and personal well-being above all else. The philosophy teaches us to endure unavoidable hardships with grace, but abuse is not an unavoidable hardship, it's a choice made by the abuser that the victim has every right and responsibility to escape. Consider the case of Michael, a marketing executive in Dallas whose supervisor, Karen, subjects him to daily verbal abuse. She screams at him in front of colleagues, calls him incompetent despite his excellent performance reviews, throws objects when frustrated, and has even grabbed his arm forcefully during heated discussions. Karen's behavior creates a hostile work environment that affects not only Michael's professional performance but his mental health, self-esteem, and overall well-being. The Stoic response to this situation isn't to bear it stoically, but to take immediate action to protect himself from continued harm. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about what he called the inner citadel, that inviolable core of our being that represents our ability to hold firm to our principles and protect our mental peace. In Meditations, he reflects, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." However, this inner strength includes the wisdom to remove ourselves from situations where our physical safety, mental health, and human dignity are under attack. The inner citadel concept doesn't mean passively accepting whatever treatment others dish out. Instead, it represents our capacity to make rational decisions about what we will and will not tolerate, and to take decisive action to protect our well-being when necessary. Epictetus, who himself experienced the ultimate abuse as a slave, understood this principle intimately. He taught, "No one can hurt you without your permission, not because victims are responsible for abuse, but because once we recognize abuse, we have the power and obligation to withdraw our consent to participate in abusive dynamics." Abuse can take many forms that aren't always immediately recognized. Emotional abuse might involve constant criticism, humiliation, isolation from support systems, or threats. Psychological abuse could include gaslighting, where the abuser makes you question your own memory and perceptions, or controlling behavior that restricts your autonomy and decision-making. Financial abuse involves controlling access to money or resources to maintain power over the victim. Physical abuse includes any unwanted physical contact, from pushing and grabbing to more severe violence. Consider Sarah, a graphic designer in Portland whose mother subjects her to emotional abuse during their weekly phone calls. Her mother criticizes everything from Sarah's career choices to her appearance, compares her unfavorably to her siblings, and uses guilt and manipulation to control Sarah's decisions. When Sarah tries to set boundaries, her mother responds with statements like, "After everything I've done for you," or threatens to cut off contact entirely. This pattern has continued for years, leaving Sarah feeling anxious, depressed, and questioning her own worth. Recognizing and addressing any form of abuse is critical not only for personal safety but also for maintaining mental health and dignity. The Stoic approach to dealing with such violations involves clear and immediate action to distance yourself from the source of abuse. This isn't about retaliation or harboring negative emotions, both of which would be contrary to Stoic principles, but about making a rational, necessary decision to remove yourself from harmful situations that violate fundamental human dignity. If you find yourself in an abusive situation, remember that seeking help is not only acceptable but essential. This might mean reaching out to trusted friends, family members, or professionals who can provide support and guidance in taking the necessary steps to ensure your safety and restore your peace of mind. 8. Cultivating excellence together, growth as shared purpose. Thomas, a 35-year-old financial advisor in Boston, has been friends with his college roommate, Brian, for over 15 years. Their friendship once thrived on deep conversations about philosophy, career aspirations, and personal development. They used to challenge each other to read more, exercise regularly, and pursue meaningful goals. But over the past few years, Thomas has noticed a troubling shift. When he shares his excitement about completing a marathon, Brian responds with dismissive comments like, "Must be nice to have all that free time." When Thomas mentions taking evening classes to advance his career, Brian scoffs and says, "You're already doing fine, why stress yourself out?" Most concerning is Brian's reaction to Thomas's efforts at self-improvement. He actively discourages them, suggesting that Thomas is showing off or trying too hard. Thomas realizes that what was once a mutually inspiring friendship has become a relationship where his growth is not only unsupported but actively undermined. In Stoicism, personal and moral growth are not just encouraged, they are absolutely central to the philosophy's teachings about living a good and meaningful life. Stoics believe that life presents us with continuous opportunities for improvement and learning, and they emphasize the critical importance of supporting each other in our individual and collective paths toward virtue and wisdom. When a relationship lacks this growth orientation or, worse, actively discourages personal development, it directly contradicts these fundamental Stoic ideals and can potentially stagnate your journey toward becoming your best self. Marcus Aurelius, writing in his Meditations, reflected on the importance of continuous self-improvement. Be like the rocky headland on which the waves constantly break. It stands firm, and round it the seething waters are laid to rest. This metaphor speaks to the Stoic ideal of remaining steadfast in our commitment to growth, even when others around us might prefer that we remain unchanged. He also wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." Stoic philosophers like Seneca and Epictetus frequently discuss the concept of synergia or mutual cooperation, emphasizing the vital role that relationships should play in our moral education and continuous self-improvement. A healthy relationship should serve as a mutual exchange where both parties actively challenge and support each other in becoming better human beings. This support isn't merely about offering encouragement during challenging times, it involves actively contributing to each other's growth through honest feedback, shared learning experiences, and constant encouragement to adhere to one's highest principles and aspirations. Consider the example of Jennifer, a marketing manager in Seattle whose sister, Amy, consistently undermines her efforts at personal development. When Jennifer decided to pursue therapy to work through childhood issues, Amy responded with, "You're just dwelling on the past, get over it." When Jennifer started a meditation practice, Amy mocked it as New Age nonsense. Most damaging is Amy's tendency to bring up Jennifer's past mistakes whenever Jennifer shows signs of positive change, saying things like, "Remember when you used to?" or "You've tried to change before and it never lasted." This pattern creates an environment where growth feels risky and vulnerable rather than supported and celebrated. When you find yourself in a relationship where you are neither growing nor being supported in your growth, it can feel like being anchored in place while the world moves forward around you. This stagnation can manifest as a persistent feeling of dissatisfaction, a nagging sense that your potential is being curtailed or held back, or a general malaise that things are not as fulfilling or meaningful as they could be. In Stoic practice, such a scenario demands serious introspection and decisive action. Seneca, in his letters to Lucilius, addressed this challenge directly. Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. Sometimes creating space for growth requires ending relationships that no longer serve our development. He also wrote, "Nothing, to my way of thinking, is a better proof of a well-ordered mind than a man's ability to stop just where he is and pass some time in his own company." This suggests that it's better to be alone than to be in relationships that actively hinder our progress. Think about David, a software engineer in Denver whose friend group has remained stuck in the same patterns for years. They spend every weekend drinking heavily, complaining about their jobs without taking action to improve their situations, and mocking anyone in their circle who tries to make positive changes. When David decided to quit drinking and focus on his health, the group's response was to pressure him to stop being so serious and to exclude him from activities when he wouldn't participate in their drinking culture. The friendship that once provided social connection now feels like a barrier to his personal development. Addressing the absence of growth and support might involve initiating open and honest conversations about your needs and expectations. You could express something like, "I'm really focused on improving myself right now, and I'd love to have your support in that journey." It might also mean redefining the relationship's goals and purposes, or in some cases, recognizing that the relationship may no longer be conducive to your development and making the difficult decision to create some distance. For Stoics, every relationship represents an opportunity to practice virtues and to help each other advance toward wisdom, virtue, and genuine happiness. A relationship that fails to contribute to this fundamental goal might not just be a neutral factor in your life, it could actually be a significant hindrance that requires honest reassessment and potentially difficult but necessary changes. 9. The art of reciprocity beyond selfish pursuits. Rachel, a 28-year-old nurse in Chicago, has been questioning her friendship with her college friend, Ashley, for months. Every interaction follows the same exhausting pattern. Ashley calls when she needs emotional support, career advice, or financial help, but she's mysteriously unavailable when Rachel faces her own challenges. When Rachel's father was hospitalized last year, Ashley was too busy with work to visit or even send a thoughtful message. When Rachel got engaged, Ashley spent their celebration dinner talking about her own dating problems rather than acknowledging Rachel's milestone. Most telling is Ashley's response to Rachel's recent promotion. Instead of congratulating her, Ashley immediately launched into complaints about her own career stagnation and suggested that Rachel got lucky rather than earned her success through hard work. Rachel realizes she's been giving and giving while receiving little in return, creating an imbalanced dynamic that leaves her feeling used and undervalued. In the philosophy of Stoicism, relationships are viewed as essential arenas for practicing fundamental virtues such as generosity, fairness, and reciprocity. A healthy relationship is indeed a dynamic two-way street characterized by mutual exchange, shared support, and balanced giving and receiving. Persistent selfish behavior in any relationship therefore stands in stark contradiction to Stoic ethics, which emphasize the paramount importance of mutual benefit, shared growth, and reciprocal support between individuals. Marcus Aurelius, reflecting on the interconnected nature of human relationships in his Meditations, wrote, "We were born to work together like feet, hands, and eyes, like the two rows of teeth, upper and lower." This powerful metaphor illustrates the Stoic belief that humans are naturally designed to support and complement each other, each contributing their unique strengths for the benefit of the whole. When one party consistently prioritizes their own needs and desires over those of others, it disrupts this natural equilibrium and undermines the fundamental harmony that should characterize healthy human connections. The imbalance created by persistent selfishness not only undermines the integrity and sustainability of the relationship but also significantly hampers both personal and moral development, which are absolutely core to Stoic philosophy and practice. Stoicism teaches us that virtue lies in achieving balance and exercising self-control, and in relationships, this principle translates to each person genuinely considering the well-being, needs, and interests of others as equal in importance to their own. Consider the case of Michael, a graphic designer in Los Angeles whose business partner, Kevin, consistently makes decisions that benefit himself while leaving Michael to handle the consequences. Kevin schedules client meetings during times that work for his schedule without consulting Michael, takes on projects that interest him personally while leaving Michael with the less desirable work, and claims credit for successful campaigns while blaming Michael when projects don't go as planned. When Michael raises these concerns, Kevin dismisses them with responses like, "You're being too sensitive," or "That's just how business works." Seneca, in his extensive correspondence with Lucilius, addressed the importance of balanced relationships. "Nothing, to my way of thinking, is a better proof of a well-ordered mind than a man's ability to stop just where he is and pass some time in his own company." However, he also emphasized that when we do choose to invest in relationships, they should be characterized by mutual respect and reciprocal care. He wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. Sometimes creating space for balanced relationships requires ending those characterized by persistent selfishness." If a relationship is consistently marked by persistent selfish behavior, it inevitably becomes a breeding ground for resentment, frustration, and deep dissatisfaction, emotions that can gradually erode even the strongest bonds of trust, affection, and mutual respect over time. The person who consistently gives without receiving begins to feel taken advantage of and unappreciated, while the selfish party often becomes increasingly entitled and demanding, creating a toxic cycle that becomes increasingly difficult to break. Think about Sarah, a marketing executive in Miami whose friend, Lisa, always expects Sarah to be available for her emotional crises but is consistently unavailable when Sarah needs support. Lisa calls at all hours when she's having relationship problems, expects Sarah to drop everything to provide comfort and advice, and becomes angry if Sarah can't immediately respond to her needs. However, when Sarah was going through a difficult divorce, Lisa was too stressed with her own problems to offer support, and she actually seemed annoyed when Sarah tried to share her own struggles during their conversations. Addressing persistent selfish behavior requires honest reflection and courageous communication. Stoic practices would encourage individuals to express their concerns calmly and clearly, focusing specifically on the impact of the behavior rather than attacking the person's character or casting blame. This might involve saying something like, "I've noticed that our relationship feels one-sided lately, and I'd like to talk about how we can create more balance." However, Stoicism also strongly emphasizes the importance of self-respect and individual autonomy. Epictetus taught, "Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it." If sincere efforts to restore balance and encourage a more generous, reciprocal spirit within the relationship prove consistently fruitless. Stoicism advocates for the wisdom to recognize when a situation is fundamentally beyond our control and when it may be prudent to distance ourselves from relationships that are essentially unvirtuous and unsustainable. In the Stoic worldview, every interaction represents a valuable opportunity to practice virtue and contribute to human flourishing. A relationship tainted by persistent selfishness is not just a personal challenge, it's a philosophical impediment to living the good life defined by mutual respect, genuine support, and continuous growth for all individuals involved. 10. Words as weapons or wisdom transforming communication. Jason, a 33-year-old accountant in Philadelphia, dreads family dinners with his brother, Mark. What should be opportunities for connection have become verbal battlefields where Mark uses sarcasm, criticism, and belittling comments as his primary forms of communication. When Jason shares news about his recent promotion, Mark responds with, "Must be nice to kiss up to the boss all day." When Jason mentions his new fitness routine, Mark smirks and says, "We'll see how long this phase lasts. Remember your last diet?" Most damaging is Mark's habit of bringing up Jason's past mistakes in front of other family members, disguising cruel comments as just joking around or keeping it real. After these interactions, Jason feels emotionally battered, questioning his accomplishments and wondering why he continues to subject himself to this toxic pattern of communication that leaves him feeling diminished and demoralized. In the Stoic philosophy, the emphasis on rationality and wisdom extends deeply into how we communicate with one another. Communication within any relationship should not only be fundamentally honest, but also constructive, uplifting, and aligned with our highest virtues. This principle aligns perfectly with the Stoic idea that our words should actively reflect our commitment to virtue and that through our speech, we can either uplift and support others in their journey toward excellence or degrade and systematically undermine their confidence, self-worth, and potential for growth. Marcus Aurelius, writing in his Meditations, emphasized the power and responsibility that comes with human communication. Be like the rocky headland on which the waves constantly break. It stands firm, and round it the seething waters are laid to rest. This metaphor suggests that our communication should be a source of stability and calm for others, not a source of chaos and emotional turbulence. He also wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking," but he understood that the words of others can significantly impact our ability to maintain that inner peace. Persistent negative communication patterns, such as constant criticism, cutting sarcasm, belittling comments, and systematic undermining, can gradually corrode the very pillars of respect and understanding that support any healthy relationship. When communication becomes consistently destructive rather than constructive, it does far more than just cause immediate hurt or discomfort. It can fundamentally alter how individuals perceive one another, systematically eroding trust, affection, and mutual respect over time. Consider the example of Maria, a teacher in Portland whose colleague, Susan, has developed a pattern of destructive communication that poisons their work environment. During staff meetings, Susan consistently interrupts Maria's contributions with dismissive comments like, "That's been tried before," or "Some of us have more experience with this." When Maria suggests new teaching strategies, Susan responds with eye-rolling and sarcastic remarks about trendy educational fads. Most damaging is Susan's habit of making subtle but cutting comments about Maria's appearance, teaching style, and personal life, always framed as constructive feedback or just being honest. The Stoic approach to communication problems involves a mindful examination of not only what is said but also how it is expressed, the intention behind it, and its impact on the relationship's overall health. Stoicism teaches us to maintain careful control over our own reactions and to choose our words wisely, ensuring they are consistently aligned with our principles of justice, wisdom, and kindness. This means actively striving to infuse our conversations with positivity, support, and genuine care for the other person's well-being. Seneca, in his letters to Lucilius, addressed the importance of thoughtful communication. Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. Sometimes transforming destructive communication patterns requires ending old habits and beginning new approaches to how we interact with others. He also emphasized, "Nothing, to my way of thinking, is a better proof of a well-ordered mind than a man's ability to stop just where he is and pass some time in his own company," suggesting that if we cannot communicate constructively with others, it may be better to limit our interactions. When disputes or disagreements inevitably arise in any relationship, the Stoic approach involves addressing them with the clear intent to resolve conflicts and rebuild understanding rather than to win arguments, prove superiority, or belittle the other person. This requires practicing active listening, seeking to understand before seeking to be understood, and responding with empathy and rational thought rather than emotional reactivity. Think about David, a software engineer in Austin whose roommate, Alex, has created a toxic communication environment in their shared living space. Alex responds to any request or concern with defensive sarcasm, makes cutting remarks about David's lifestyle choices, and has developed a pattern of using David's vulnerabilities against him during arguments. When David tried to address the issue directly, Alex dismissed his concerns with, "You're being too sensitive," and "I'm just being honest, sorry if you can't handle the truth." Addressing and transforming destructive communication requires deliberate effort and commitment from both parties. It may involve setting specific goals for how to speak and respond in conversations, practicing active listening techniques, seeking to understand the underlying needs and concerns behind harsh words, or even seeking external help like counseling to develop better communication skills and break entrenched negative patterns. The Stoic practice of regular self-reflection is particularly crucial here. It involves consistently assessing our own communication habits and honestly considering whether they align with our ethical and philosophical goals. However, if sincere efforts to reform communication patterns do not lead to meaningful improvement, Stoicism also recognizes the importance of protecting one's well-being and inner peace. 11. Honoring your boundaries. Self-respect as virtue. Amanda, a 30-year-old social worker in Washington, D.C., has been struggling with her relationship with her sister, Claire, for years. Despite Amanda's repeated requests for advance notice before visits, Claire regularly shows up at Amanda's apartment unannounced, expecting to be welcomed regardless of Amanda's plans or emotional state. When Amanda expresses that she needs time to decompress after difficult workdays, Claire dismisses her needs with comments like, "You're being antisocial," or "Family should always come first." Most troubling is Claire's habit of making major decisions that affect both of them, like planning family vacations or making commitments on Amanda's behalf without consulting her first. When Amanda tries to assert her boundaries, Claire responds with guilt trips, "I thought we were close," or "You're becoming selfish." Amanda finds herself constantly accommodating Claire's demands while her own needs remain unmet and unacknowledged, creating a dynamic that leaves her feeling invisible and disrespected in her own life. In Stoicism, the respect for personal needs and boundaries is seen as absolutely essential for maintaining both self-respect and harmony within relationships. Ignoring, trivializing, or consistently overriding these fundamental aspects of human dignity can lead to significant imbalances in relationships, fostering an environment where disrespect and deep dissatisfaction thrive unchecked. Stoic philosophy advocates for clear, honest communication and genuine mutual respect as the essential pillars upon which all healthy relationships should be built and maintained. Marcus Aurelius, reflecting on the importance of personal autonomy and self-respect in his Meditations, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." This principle extends to our relationships. While we cannot control others' actions, we have both the power and the responsibility to establish and maintain boundaries that protect our well-being, dignity, and peace of mind. He also emphasized, very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking, but this inner happiness requires protecting ourselves from those who would consistently disregard our fundamental needs. When someone consistently overlooks or actively diminishes your personal needs and boundaries, it sends a clear and unmistakable message that your well-being, comfort, and autonomy are not priorities within the relationship. This disregard can manifest in countless ways, repeatedly overstepping clearly established boundaries, making unilateral decisions that significantly affect both parties without consultation or consideration, failing to acknowledge and validate your feelings and preferences, or dismissing your needs as unimportant or unreasonable. Consider the case of Robert, a marketing executive in San Francisco whose friend, Kevin, consistently violates his boundaries around money and time. Robert has explained multiple times that he prefers to split expenses evenly when they go out together, but Kevin regularly forgets his wallet, expecting Robert to cover the bill with vague promises to pay you back later. That never materialized. Kevin also has a pattern of calling Robert late at night when he's having personal crises, despite Robert's clear communication that he needs uninterrupted sleep due to his demanding work schedule. When Robert tries to enforce these boundaries, Kevin responds with manipulative statements like, "I thought you were a real friend," or "You've changed, you used to be more generous." Such behaviors not only systematically undermine the trust and equality that should characterize healthy relationships, but also gradually erode the individual's sense of worth, autonomy, and self-respect. Key aspects that Stoics strive diligently to protect and cultivate. Seneca, in his extensive writings on friendship and relationships, emphasized, "Nothing, to my way of thinking, is a better proof of a well-ordered mind than a man's ability to stop just where he is and pass some time in his own company." This suggests that maintaining healthy boundaries isn't about being antisocial or selfish, it's about protecting the mental space and emotional resources necessary for personal growth and virtue. Think about Lisa, a nurse in Denver whose mother, Patricia, consistently disregards her boundaries around personal information and life choices. Patricia regularly shares Lisa's private business with extended family members despite Lisa's explicit requests for privacy, criticizes Lisa's career and relationship decisions as if Lisa were still a child, and shows up at Lisa's workplace unannounced to check on her. When Lisa tries to establish boundaries, Patricia responds with emotional manipulation, "After everything I've done for you," or "You're breaking my heart by pushing me away." Addressing these issues involves first recognizing and clearly affirming your own needs and boundaries. From a Stoic perspective, this isn't about selfishness or narcissism, but about essential self-care. Ensuring that you are not compromising your moral and emotional well-being for the sake of keeping superficial peace or avoiding uncomfortable conversations. Epictetus taught, "Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it." Sometimes embodying Stoic principles means having the courage to stand firm in our boundaries despite others' resistance or disapproval. The next crucial step involves communicating these needs clearly and assertively to the other person. This dialogue should not be confrontational or accusatory, but rather approached with the genuine intent to educate the other person about your needs and explain why they are important for maintaining a healthy, respectful relationship. You might say something like, "I need you to respect my request for advance notice before visits because it helps me manage my schedule and mental energy effectively." However, if after these honest discussions, the disregard for your personal needs and boundaries continues unchanged, it may be necessary to seriously reconsider the dynamics of the relationship. Stoicism teaches the fundamental importance of surrounding ourselves with people who contribute positively to our lives and support our commitment to virtue. A relationship that consistently fails to meet this essential criterion, creating more turmoil than tranquility, might require the difficult but necessary decision to create distance to protect our well-being and moral integrity. 12. The circle of accountability, mutual responsibility. Kevin, a 29-year-old engineer in Seattle, has been friends with Jason for years. Initially, their friendship thrived on shared interests, mutual support, and a sense of camaraderie. However, over time, Kevin has noticed a troubling trend. Jason rarely takes responsibility for his actions. When they work on projects together, Jason often misses deadlines, blames external circumstances for his shortcomings, and deflects any criticism back onto Kevin. "If you had done your part better, this wouldn't have happened," Jason often says, leaving Kevin feeling frustrated and overburdened. This lack of accountability has not only strained their friendship, but has also made Kevin question whether he can rely on Jason in both personal and professional contexts. In Stoic philosophy, mutual accountability isn't just beneficial. It's essential for the health and longevity of any relationship. Stoicism teaches us that being accountable for our actions is a fundamental virtue. This mutual accountability fosters trust and respect, which are crucial for any enduring relationship. When accountability is lacking, it can lead to a breakdown in these critical relationship pillars, causing repeated misunderstandings and eroding the trust that forms the foundation of all healthy interactions. Marcus Aurelius, reflecting on the importance of personal responsibility in his meditations, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This principle emphasizes the necessity of owning our actions and decisions, regardless of external factors. When we fail to take responsibility for our behavior, we not only undermine our own integrity but also harm our relationships with others. Consider the example of Sarah, a project manager in New York City whose colleague, Tom, consistently avoids accountability in their shared work. Whenever a project falls short, Tom is quick to blame the team, claiming, "If everyone had just followed my lead, we would have succeeded." When Sarah tries to address specific areas where Tom's decisions may have led to issues, he becomes defensive, insisting that he did everything right. This pattern creates a toxic work environment where Sarah feels unsupported and undervalued, eroding her motivation and trust in Tom as a partner. The absence of mutual accountability can lead to a one-sided dynamic where one person consistently feels they are not being heard or respected. This imbalance is profoundly destabilizing because, in a Stoic sense, a relationship should be a source of mutual support and growth, helping each individual align more closely with their virtues. When one party shirks responsibility, it places an undue burden on the other, leading to resentment and frustration. Epictetus, a prominent Stoic philosopher, taught that accountability begins with a keen self-awareness of our actions and their consequences. He famously stated, "No man is free who is not master of himself." This emphasis on self-mastery includes recognizing when we have made mistakes and taking the necessary steps to rectify them. In a relationship, this means being willing to admit when we are wrong, making amends, and committing to doing better in the future. In practice, fostering an environment of mutual accountability involves open and honest communication. It requires both parties to discuss their expectations clearly and agree on what accountability looks like for them. This might involve setting specific standards for behavior, discussing the consequences of actions, and having regular check-ins to ensure both parties feel supported and respected. Think about Lisa, a marketing director in Denver, who has noticed that her friend, Rachel, often fails to take responsibility for her actions. When they made plans to go out, Rachel frequently canceled at the last minute due to unforeseen circumstances, leaving Lisa feeling unimportant and undervalued. When Lisa finally confronts Rachel about this pattern, Rachel brushes it off, saying, "You're too uptight. Things come up." The lack of accountability from Rachel not only hurts Lisa's feelings, but also creates underlying tension that threatens their friendship. Addressing a lack of mutual accountability requires courage and vulnerability. Lisa could approach Rachel and say, "I really value our friendship, but I feel hurt when plans are changed at the last minute. Can we talk about how we can both be more reliable for each other?" This approach fosters an opportunity for constructive dialogue, allowing Rachel to understand the impact of her actions and encouraging her to take responsibility for her commitments. However, Stoicism recognizes that mutual accountability cannot be enforced. It must be willingly embraced by both parties. If attempts to establish accountability fail to yield positive changes, it may be necessary to evaluate the viability of the relationship. Stoicism does not advocate enduring harmful situations indefinitely. Rather, it suggests that we should seek out and maintain relationships that are conducive to our moral and personal growth. In the Stoic view, every interaction is an opportunity to practice virtue. A relationship lacking mutual accountability is not merely a personal challenge. It is a philosophical one. It represents an impediment to living a good life defined by justice, wisdom, and courage. Recognizing and addressing such challenges is crucial, not just for personal happiness, but for adhering to a moral and ethical way of life that enriches both ourselves and others. Accountability fosters growth, encourages self-reflection, and builds deeper connections among individuals. It creates a culture where everyone feels valued and respected, leading to stronger, more meaningful relationships. As we cultivate this environment of mutual responsibility, we align ourselves with Stoic ideals that promote integrity, clarity, and personal excellence. The Stoics' courageous choice, walking away with wisdom. As we reflect on the insights we've explored together, it's essential to recognize the profound impact that our relationships have on our lives. Stoicism teaches us that while we cannot control the actions of others, we have the power to choose how we respond to them. In navigating our social connections, we must embrace the courage to make choices that align with our values and protect our inner peace. Throughout this journey, we've examined the 12 signs that indicate when it may be time to reassess our relationships. From recognizing a persistent lack of respect to confronting manipulation and establishing healthy boundaries, each sign serves as a guide for evaluating the dynamics in our lives. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus wisely stated, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This profound truth reminds us that the responsibility to foster healthy relationships lies within us. Consider the Stoic practice of evening reflection. At the end of each day, take a moment to review your interactions and assess whether they align with your commitment to virtue. Are your relationships enriching your life and contributing to your growth, or are they draining your energy and undermining your self-respect? By honestly evaluating these connections, you empower yourself to make the necessary changes that may include setting boundaries, having difficult conversations, or even walking away from relationships that no longer serve your highest good. Walking away from a toxic or unfulfilling relationship is not an act of failure. It is a courageous assertion of self-respect and a commitment to living a virtuous life. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. By surrounding ourselves with those who uplift and inspire us, we create an environment conducive to our well-being and personal growth. As we conclude this exploration of Stoic wisdom in relationships, I encourage you to take these teachings to heart. Embrace the courage to assess your connections, set healthy boundaries, and prioritize your inner peace. You deserve relationships that honor your dignity and contribute positively to your journey. If you found value in this discussion and wish to continue exploring the practical applications of Stoicism in your life, we invite you to subscribe to the Stoic Viva channel. By doing so, you join a community of individuals committed to living thoughtfully and intentionally. Don't forget to like and share this content with others who may benefit from these insights. Together, we can spread the timeless wisdom of Stoicism and empower ourselves and those around us to navigate the complexities of modern relationships with grace and strength. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Remember, the path to a virtuous life is filled with choices, and the courage to make the right ones is the essence of Stoic wisdom. Until next time, stay steadfast in your pursuit of inner tranquility and meaningful connections.